And can you all see my screen? Okay. All right. So let's just do a quick refresher on what we were able to get done yesterday. So we started work on building this app that allows us to view visualizations of COVID data, right? We got a CSV file from Wale. At the last backend session, we had written a script to parse that file and create a REST endpoint with the data from that file. Last night, we tweaked that. We had also written a script to actually read that CSV file and write to the database. So last night we tweaked that file so that we could save the dates properly, with the proper date. But we also tweaked the endpoint so that it returns some totals for us, right? And then on the Angular side, on the front end side, we built a front end app, an Angular app that allows us to actually view that data. We created a number of components that we used. We created this nav component that just has the nav there at the top. And then we created a highlights component that we use to display the highlights. And we created a table component that we use to create the table, right? I didn't talk too much about the details of what I was doing because I wanted to get a lot done quickly. Today, I will still try to get a lot done quickly, but before we jump in, I just want to go into the different pieces so you understand how they come together, okay? And hopefully you can tap into the knowledge that you've been collecting so far to make it easier to understand. So just a quick review. Let's look at the highlights component. Okay, and let's look at the template for the highlights component. All right, so the template for the highlights component just has these 4 divs. This is all HTML and should be familiar right now. I mean, at this stage, it should be familiar, but we have 4 divs. And these divs are in a container div. So there's like a parent div that wraps it up, all up. And that container div has an ID of highlights. And then for each of the divs, we have, so each of these tiles here on the right is a div. And so that's the heading, today's cases, and then this is the value. And for the value, we're showing from the data that we have, we're showing today's cases, the today's cases property. Now, this is a Boolean OR, right? This is a Boolean OR. So it's today's cases or not available, which means if there's no cases, say not available. If we don't have this data, then display not available instead. Okay, so we have this pattern repeated for the 4 divs, which give us these styles. Okay, now from a styles perspective, these divs are laid out horizontally because they're all set up as inline block. They have a minimum width, right? But then I also set for the width to grow. Okay, so this is the highlights component. Any questions so far about this? We understand the template expression here, right? And this is the binding that displays the data. Okay. So no questions. Let's look at the table component. That is a little more interesting because I made my tables dynamic. And here's what I did with my table. Rather than lay out all the columns, right? I didn't do that. I set it up such that I have the list of columns defined in the component. It's an array. And this way, I can control what the structure of my table. For example, if I want to get rid of the country code column, I can actually just remove it from here. And if I save that, right, let's see, our backend server is not running right now. So I run this and I refresh that. We no longer have the country code. Okay. This is the benefit of writing dynamic HTML. You can write, you see how small the markup is here? The template is very small for a table. Typically, a table of this size would have a lot more going on, right? But the way I have this is I have an array of fields and I loop through that array to create each column. So this is an ng4, essentially a for loop, but in Angular, right? And for each field in this array, I output the label, which is what's happening here, which is how you get this table header, okay? And then the same thing for the data. Now this one you will almost definitely always have to do like this if you're presenting data, because you can't create enough rows since you don't know how many rows you have in your data in advance, right? Your data is coming from an external source, so you don't know how many rows you will have. So you have to build it off of the data. And so this is a for loop off of each record in the data. And then the same thing we did here, we're looping through the fields again here to create each column of the data. The benefit of this is your fields will always match because it's the same loop. Okay? And for each field, we're outputting that field on the data. So for the country field, we're outputting field.name will be country when it's on the country field. So it will be record.country. That's what this square bracket syntax is. This is called array syntax for objects, right? Where you don't know what the property is in advance. You're using a variable for the property, so you can't say dot something, but you can use array syntax to dynamically define the property. So this is it for the table, component. It's also very simple. It's not the only thing. Now, what's special about those two components is that they both take inputs, and the input that they both take is the data. So we have our main component, the app component, that brings all of those components together. So, and and this is how they come together. And so we pass the data into each component. That's how it goes into the input property. And these square brackets here, this is called a binding. This is a one-way binding to this property on this component. So it's a one-way binding, which is binding the input property of the highlights component, right, to the data property on the parent component, on this app component. And that's how we pass the value from one component, from parent component to a child component. We haven't dealt with passing it back from the child to the parent. It's a little more complex than that. But we'll see. We will need to do it in this project, and hopefully we'll get to that today. Okay, so now yesterday when we were working on this, now of course one thing I haven't shown yet, sorry, that I forgot to mention, is that to get the data from the backend, who remembers what we had to do to get the data from backend? Anyone? There's one piece I haven't talked about yet, but that is a piece that you need to connect to backend servers. What's that?
So, what's the question?
The question is, there's a piece that we need to connect to back-end servers, right? And that's for front-end folks, so you're not a front-end guy, so yeah. So for the front-end in Angular to connect to an external resource, there's a piece we have to make. What was that?
Oh yeah, now Wale.
Anyone? Front-end folks, at least help me feel like I haven't just been.
I wanted to say like a webhook, but I know that's not it. But
No, yeah, and you're a backend, you're an infrastructure guy as well, so I need somebody that's been attending the front end to help here. At least help me feel like I've been able to share something. How do you, from a component, connect to a REST service, to a web service or a backend? Nobody, like not even one person, no attempt, nothing. Come on, guys. Okay, we create a service and we import HTTP client, right? We direct inject that into the service, and that's what we use to connect, essentially make HTTP requests, right? Okay, so we'll move on. So just pick up from where we left yesterday. All right, so where we left off, we have this is our backend, and it's returning the aggregates that we have. Now, we had tried using Angular material yesterday. We didn't get set up. So I was going to do it before the class, but then I decided it's probably better just to walk through it in the class so that anyone else that wants to use Angular material in the future will at least have some reference on how to do it. So I'm going to open up the I'm going to open up the Angular material reference here. And so let's just go to Google here. See, actually, I may have we're going to set up Angular material again here, and we'll just go through the steps because it's changed since the last version I used. Here, we're going to start with ng add Angular. And
why add and not install?
because we're adding it to the Angular project. This is ng. You can't ng install anything. You can npm install.
I see. Okay.
Right. But in this case, Angular material is an Angular library, right? So, and then Just put set up global angular material typography. Yes. So, updating package JSON. Okay, and it's updated Angular JSON. All right. So, and you can see here, here in the documentation, it tells you what it's doing. Wow. It adds the components to package JSON, add Roboto font to index HTML, add the material design icon font to your index HTML, and then add a few global CSS styles. So remove margins from body, set height to 100% on HTML, set Roboto as. So what it's talking about here is that if you look at the styles here, this is what Angular material did. That's what they're telling us here, right? It removed the margins from body. So if you look at body, margin is 0. And then it set the height to 100% on HTML and body. So right here, HTML and body, set the height to 100%. And then it set Roboto as the default application font, which is what it did here. Okay. And this is setting font. So if Roboto is not available, then Helvetica new, and if Helvetica new is not available, then just sans serif basic font. So that's what Angular add did for us. Okay. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to import the specific Angular modules that we need, right? So right now, we can test this out really by just, we'll try to add something. And let's try that out. So let's go into component here. And let's try to add let's just try to add a card. Or let's try to add a divider. So in using Angular components and Angular material component, if you come to the API here, it tells you how to import that component. And what we'll do is in the app module, so source app, right? And we come into the app module. In here, you import this component here. So we're going to import that divider, right? And then we're going to add it to the imports. So this is the map divider module. So add it to the imports here. And then let's look at our app.component.html. And here we're going to try to add the divider. So let's add a divider here between the highlights, which is simple flat divider. Okay. And so if we now come here to this page here, if it works, we should have a divider, which we do, you can't really see it. There's actually a divider up there. And you can tell it's not broken here. We don't have any errors. If I did something that was wrong, like if I said not dividers, watch this. So you can see that it's actually working. I'm gonna save this. right? And I come here, they'll complain about it. Okay, so this shows us that we now have Angular material set up just fine. So rather than the divider, let's do something cool. Here between our nav bar and our content, or at the top of the content, let's have a progress indicator while it is fetching data, right? So we're going to use the progress bar, right? And we're going to use the indeterminate progress bar. So we come to API and we'll borrow this. Okay, take that line here. We'll come to our module. I will import that. Just paste that here.
Meanwhile, what you're doing is what everybody is expected to do. It's not like you memorize all those things. You always go to the website to get it, right?
You always use reference, yeah. There's no one expects you to memorize everything.
Cool.
Because these things are constantly changing. What you need to know is how to find that information and use it. So now that I've created this, right? This is the API, and they tell you, right, what the component is. So I'm going to come here at the top here. And let's come back to our view here. I'm going to come here at the top here. I'm going to add a mat progress bar. And the mode is indeterminate. Right. Progress bar. All right. When I save this here, see what that's given us? And that's a nice progress bar there at the top of our page. Right. But we only want that to show up when data, before, like while it's loading data, right? So here, we can actually set this up to use a conditional on it, which is our ngIf, right? Loading. And so this way, it's not showing up. But what I can do now is, because we set it to loading, and this is on our app component, right? So if we come into the component itself, and we set a property of the component here called loading, and set it to true, right? So that's showing, that's now spinning. And then we want to set it to false when we get the data, which is here, right? Which is after the call to the server has completed. We don't want that spinner to show anymore. So we say this dot loading equals false. When I save this, watch what happens. Okay. And then what we can also do here, we can actually wrap these. We don't want to show empty tiles until the data is loaded, right? So we can put a div around them and make them conditional. ngIf equals not loading. So when loading is false, not loading will happen when loading is false. So we're just wrapping those in a container. You can see how divs are being used. They're like containers.
Yeah.
Group things together. That's what you do with divs, really, because they're divisions. So sections of the screen. You see that? So that's how it works now.
Sorry, there's somebody in the lobby. I remember them from front end.
Okay. All right. So that's it. So we've added. So we now have Angular material in here, and that's giving us the ability to do cool stuff like have this nice cool spinner. Right. Now the other thing that we haven't added that we will add is the Flex Layout Library. And the Flex Layout Library allows us to define a flex grid easily. So the CSS Flex Grid is a very new addition to CSS3. But what it does is that, and let me explain why flex layouts and flex grids are important. In the old days, right, before mobile phones and tablets, we only had pretty much one screen size. Right, before laptops, you had one screen size. It was 640 by 480 or 800 by 600 if you had a high resolution screen, right? Everybody had those sizes. Eventually 800 by 600 became the standard, right? Then laptops came on the scene and made screen sizes vary slightly, screen resolutions. So you had the desktop monitors, the category tubes, you had them at 800 by 600, and then you had laptops at 1024 by 768. That's the resolution. 1024 pixels horizontally, 768 pixels vertically, right? That was the resolution. And when that happened, that was like in the early 2000s, we started making websites and used tables for layout, because you can set the table width to 100%. And so if you look at this table here on the screen, the width is 100%. And so if I resize this screen, right, if I adjust the size of this screen, the size of the table will adjust. If I make it larger, it will always be 100% because it is calculating its width based on the size of the screen. And so this allowed us to make, websites then that would fill up the screen, and we didn't have to preset what the screen sizes were. We didn't care, right? We just used a table and things always aligned nicely. And then somewhere in the middle 2000s, late 2000s, mobile devices came on board. The iPhone came out. All of a sudden, we start having users trying to browse on their phones. And early, like 2010, a lot of people were accessing websites on their phone. And there was a need to make a website look good on a mobile device as well as on a desktop. So one approach then was for people to create a separate mobile site. So you would have M. Facebook still has that till today. You still have an M. Right?
Transition sucks.
Facebook.com. Right. So they still have that, even though they have made Facebook responsive. But companies would have a separate mobile site from their desktop site. Now, of course, that's a nightmare to maintain, because if you wanted to make a minor change, you had to change 2 applications and then manage their deployments and all of that. And then a strategy came out. The concept of responsive design became a big thing, like around 2010, 2011, right? It became a big thing, and the approach was to write CSS that could detect the screen size. And based on the screen size, show or hide elements or display elements horizontally or vertically based on the screen size, right? So you defined what were called breakpoints. So you had the screen size from 0 wide, even though that's really nothing, 0 to maybe 480 wide, right? And then 480, or 0 to 640, 640 to 800, 800 to 1024, 1024 to 1920. Like you define those, and then you define CSS for each screen size, right? Such that when you adjust, or when the site is viewed by a certain device, the CSS that's rendered is based on the screen size of the device, right? So those are called media queries, and it's a capability that's supported in CSS. is to say for this size, here are the styles for this size. Now, of course, that means you had a lot of CSS that weren't exactly redundant because they had different values, but it was a lot of work to maintain them. And then you had a lot of grid-based, frameworks come out, Bootstrap, to try to simplify that so that they abstract the media queries out of CSS and into HTML. So you just add HTML attributes that would then say, okay, this is how you handle this same element. This is how you handle it for small sizes for mobile phones. This is how you handle it for tablet. This is how you handle it for desktop, right? And then fast forward a few more years, now we have what's called the Flex Grid added to CSS3. It's very, very interesting stuff if you look into it. But if you look at the, and I'm gonna try to come to somewhere here. Let's just come to Google here. And if you look for CSS3, Flex 3, right? Or Flexbox, actually. This is something that's very, very interesting. And it is based, I mean, this is something that you should probably go look at on your own. But this sets up for even more dynamic layouts, and it's now built into CSS natively, so you don't exactly have to do media queries and define sizes. You can define areas as flexible. Now, with all that story, all that is to say that Angular, there's a package for Angular, right, called Flex Layout that allows you to do that easily. So we're going to install that, and the reason I want to use that is to make these look better. Right now, they're not in the center, they're not in, you know what I mean? They're kind of, their size is not dynamic based on the size of the screen, and their layout is not dynamic based on the layout of the screen, on the size of the screen. So we'll install that because it gives you a little more control over layout. Okay, so let's go in here and let me do this. Let's see what this is I have behind here. And 1 second. All right, so this way. All right, so we're just gonna do Angular Flex layout. Okay, and again, similar thing, you come here. There's documentation on installing it, right? So we're gonna install it like that. And just copy that. Come here, paste that command. And npm I is npm install, -s is -- save. This is the shortcut. Okay, just like we have ngs. So you find that a lot of these commands now have shortcuts.
I don't understand the difference between installing without saving and installing with saving.
Remember, if you don't save, it's not written to package JSON. Yeah. So if I commit this and push this out and you get it.
Now I see why I had an issue.
Yes. So you have to
That was one of my issues.
Yes. So you have to save, and that way anyone that clones it or pulls it can do an npm install, and they'll have the same packages that you used when you were developing. Right? So it's very important. And there's save and save dev. Save dev is for installing dev dependencies that aren't part of the software, but they are tools that help you develop. Right? All right, so we import that, and then So we've got a flex layout. And so what we need to do is we need to add this to our module. So let's come back to our module here. And we just add this. And again, you typically find all the, if you go to any package page, it's the best practice to write documentation for your app or your package in the repo, right? That's what the README is for. So you always find documentation like this that help you set it up. You don't have to memorize how to set up. So we're going to take this flex layout here. And like I said, it's no one's going to expect you to have memorized every single command and every single line. It's reference. Okay. So now that we've added, you know, the flex layout, which is good, we can start using it. So I'll explain that in a second here. Let's go back to our app. This is complaining about something. Okay, module. Oh, okay, we have a duplicate identifier. That is totally my bad. Because I still have it here. Right there. All right. Okay, I still have it here too. Let's see. No, I don't. What are you complaining about now? Let's search. Let's steal this. Let's run this again. Once we have this in there, then our layout will be a lot more interesting. Okay. All right. So we have it there. And so now let's see how we would use that. So let's open our highlights component, right? Which is where we have these. And I'm going to open the style sheets. So here, and we will just open the styles as well. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the inline blocks off of these highlight tiles, right? So where is that? Display inline block. I'll take this out, and I'll take the width out as well, and the main width. Okay. And so this is what we're going to get. All right. And I'm going to achieve those same results now using, I'm also going to take the margin away. All right. I'm going to take this margin left for the first child away as well. Okay. So this is what we have now. It's all squished together. I don't know, everything's blocked. And then here, I'm going to come here and I will say FX layout. And for layout, you can have row, in which case the contents are in columns, or you can have column, in which case all the contents are blocked, right? So I'm going to go with a row because I want the contents to be laid out side by side. So all I need to do is actually say fx layout equals row here. And for each item in it, I'll say fx flex, right? Which means I want them to evenly divide the space. So I'm not specifying a percentage for the flex. I'm just saying, you know, do the math amongst yourself. If I put 5 items, they'll be exactly the same width, all 5 of them. So if I do this now, I save that, right? They're now horizontal, and you see they're all exactly the same size. The difference here now is if I adjust the width of my page, you can see that it will always try to divide it into 5 until I can't go any smaller, right? Okay, now I need some spacing between them. So on the container here,
Wait,
I'll
I
say,
noticed that it kind of accounted for the content also. Like when you were reducing the size, the one with the larger content stayed wider. Or was that just my imagination?
Well, we can see. No, it's not.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it's not, because that's what flex is. So flex, what flex says, what fx flex means is use the remaining space. So if I specify a size for one of these items, right? Or if I specify a size for 3 of the items and I put flex on the fourth will take the space that's left. It's a flex box. It will just take up all the remaining space. That's what fx flex say means, really. So let's say, for example, if I say fx flex, right, equals here, you can say 20, right, which is 20%, right? If I put this on 3 of them, 20, 40, 60, right? The last one will take up the remaining space. You see that these 3 will be the same size, and then this one will take up whatever space is left.
Nice. So it's good that you can actually specify what percentage each one takes, and they still divide amongst them. So nice.
Yes,
nice.
You can. So the Flexbox, like I said, it is something that you would actually want to go into the documentation and enjoy. It's one of my favorite things ever. You know, and so you can, you know, and there's lots of stuff here, but yeah, there's documentation and let me see.
Interesting.
So if you look at this, yeah. Okay.
Interesting. There's almost nothing new to learn, as it were. It's just a matter of going there, picking what you want, plugging it in. Wow.
Yep. You don't have to invent it from scratch.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now so for this flex now, right, let's make it look a little better, right? Which means we just want them to breathe a little. So we'll set the gap between them. So we just say fx layout gap, right? Or I can say 20 pixels. And the beauty of this is to do all the math, calculate everything, and put 20 pixels of space between them. All right? I think that 20 pixels.
Awesome.
Right? And you see, it puts it between them, doesn't put it at the end. Yes. Mm-hmm.
What if you need to put a comma because the way the figures are,
we'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Yeah. We'll get to that. All right. So last thing we need to do, I mean, look at it, it's kind of bumping against the bottom one, right? So here we're just going to do a margin bottom. Oh, what that mean? Oh, I did equals to, sorry, it's not JavaScript. All right, and this is totally No, all right, so here it's already starting to look better, right? Also, so following this same concept, right? Following this same concept, we have a left margin here that is coming from somewhere. So I'm going to inspect this, and it's on my content. Um, let me see. Is it just me, or does it seem like the left margin is bigger than the right margin?
It looks the same to me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's the same. It's just it's parallax. All right, never mind that. Okay, so let's go on. Now, before we go into deal with these numbers, I'm going to introduce a concept in Angular called pipes. Okay. In Angular JS, they used to be called filters, but in Angular 2 and above, and we're on Angular 9 now, they're called pipes. And pipes are built-in functions in Angular, right? They either come with Angular, or you can create your own pipes. But what they do is they take an input, either format it, slice it, whatever, and produce an output. Okay. So for example, I can create a pipe that converts letters, that converts text to uppercase. And that way I can use it in my template. And every time I need to convert letters to uppercase, I just pass it to my uppercase pipe. It will be a function that takes an input, does a text to uppercase, and outputs that. That's the simplest version of a pipe. It's just does something to the data. You can use pipes to, split arrays, like the slice thing that we did. We can actually use a pipe for that and say, hey, we take the full array that has everything, pass it to a pipe, and the output is a subset of that array, right? So pipes allow us to kind of create reusable functions, right? But reusable functions at an application-wide level. They're different from methods and a component. The methods and the component are only visible to the template of that component, right? But if I wanted to make a function that's visible to all templates in my application, right? So something, a utility function, that would be a pipe. Angular comes with many pipes, right? Angular comes with many pipes, including pipes for formatting dates and stuff like that. So for example, our date string here, right? Our date string here. We can tweak our table so that for this column, the date here is formatted nicely. So we use the pipe for that, and then we use the pipe for our numbers here, so they look better. So let's come into it here, and let's open up our table. That's a little tricky because our table is dynamically generated, right? But what we can do here is we can do an ngIf on this one. Actually, we can do this. So we can say, we'll use a ternary operator now because we only want to do this date formatting only on the date field. So we'll say if the field name, right, is date reported, right? Right? Then output this piped through date medium, right? If not, just output it directly. Do you understand this? Now, this is our pipe. That's the reason it's called pipe, because it's a pipe character, right? It's a pipe character. We're piping it through the date pipe. And if we look at the documentation here, let's look at Angular documentation for date. So, for Angular date pipe. Okay, here we have date pipe Angular. And this is the date pipe. It's an input value, and then the format is a string. All right. Okay, the default is medium date, so I don't even need to provide a default. But here's a list of the formats, the built-in formats, and you can create your own custom format. All right. So you can go with short, medium, long, or short date, medium date, or long date. So if we come here, we can actually we don't need to provide the format. Yeah. Date. And let's see. All right, so let's see what happens here. You see what's going on here? The date now looks much nicer. All right, that is the date pipe we use there. So for this one now, we want to use the number pipe. So the same thing we did. Let's look for number pipe. Okay, and so we have different ones. We have a current decimal pipe. Let's see. Okay, so this decimal type is used to define a certain number of significant digits, right? A certain number of decimal points. That is not what we want. So all we want to do is to do a number format. So let's see, Angular format number. Okay, apparently we will format number here. Okay. That's part of Angular. All right, now we have to see how to use this. Here. Let's take a Stack Overflow. Someone asked this question. Oh, all right, let's see. Well, it says you can just use the number pipe directly. All right, let's Let's try that. So we can come here to our highlights template. And remember, using a pipe is just using a pipe. So what we're going to do here is say this type to number. All right. Do this here. This here. And let's see what we get. Nope. Oh, yeah. So we need to group it so that it knows what we're doing an OR for. We have all. Which one am I missing? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Let's do that. Nope, I did nothing for us. Oh yeah, well, it's reloading. Yep. It's number formatted now. Is this better?
Yep.
All right. Okay. First half done. Let's get some charts in here. Okay. So what would be a good graph to show? So we can put pie charts, line charts, bar charts. What is bar chart?
You could do bar charts comparing countries, statistics, or you could do a graph timeline showing the curve for a particular country or set of countries or something. So you could take one country and then just do the curve, like the number of the different days, the number of maybe deaths on each day for a particular period, and show how the curve moved.
Okay. All right. So yes, we can definitely do a line graph to show the curve, and the curve for cases and the curve for deaths, right?
Yes, maybe even overlap them if possible.
Yes, they can be on the same chart. Okay. I also really want to get a pie chart in there, but what can I do with the pie chart? Oh, the regions, the WHO regions.
Yes, that's a good one.
The pie chart of regions. All right. Okay. So let's do that. First thing we need to do though, we need a backend to give us that data, right? We have to get the data in that format from somewhere. So if we want to do, and so let's do the pie charts first by region. We can do the pie charts for the day and the pie charts cumulative. Right? Anyone?
Sorry, I missed the question.
I said we can do the pie charts for the day and the pie charts for cumulative.
Yeah, pie charts would probably, yeah, we can do, yeah,
And,
just for the day
we'll,
is fine.
Yeah,
just for the day is fine.
Yeah, we'll do both.
Both,
it's
okay, yeah.
The same amount of work.
Cool.
Well, just a little more, but and then under it, then we can have a line graph with a date range, and then you can select your start date and end date and see what the data is like. How's that? All right, let's see if we can knock that out in 1 hour. All right. So let's talk about for our pie chart. We need to get the data. Where's that where does the data come from? I
So,
want us to just talk through solutioning it. Think
so
about
right
pieces we
now,
need to build.
right now, this data is coming from a converted JSON file.
It's coming from the database.
Yes, that, yeah, okay.
It's coming from the database. So what do we need to build to get the data we need? So I'm talking more high level now. Like, let's talk about the different pieces and then we'll build them quickly. Right? I want us to think as if we're trying to solve this problem.
So are you asking what to trigger, how we get it to trigger for new data? Is that what you're saying?
No. So
Okay.
we want to build, so here's what, so let's assume I'm the client, right? And I'm like, okay, this is fine. You've given me this, the data in the database. I want to see a pie chart that shows me the cases in a day by region, the deaths in a day by region, the total cases by region, total deaths by region. Okay, I'm the client. I have these wild ideas. So you are the developers, you're the engineers. Tell me what you would do to deliver that. I remember there's no stupid suggestions, so let's just go for it.
So are you asking?
Yeah.
Are you asking if the client is asking for that thing on demand or as a static request or something that should appear on the page?
No, just so this data that you've shown me here,
Yes.
I want to see it with a pie chart of the regions. I'll say comparison of cases by region, total deaths by region, today's cases by region, today's deaths by region, total cases by region, total deaths by region. Since I have this W2 region coming. Yep. So I want to see that. So
asking if it's a one-time solution that you see permanently when they get to the site, or something that any user that goes to the site can request.
You're digging too deep.
Okay.
Just for this data you've shown me here.
I would think you'd create an, I guess maybe multiple arrays, maybe an array for the region, or maybe Africa, the rest, and then group them by the regions and display the data.
Yeah, so I will go with, so was that Ralph or Rocky?
Yes, Ralph.
Yeah, I'll go with Ralph. So, but I'll, in my view, I'll do the calculations of the percentages from the data we hold, and then display that as a pie chart.
Right.
So I need to create just like you did it yesterday, a little table bit with all the regions in percentage terms. So work that out, and then supply that to I guess there's an Angular thing that does the charts.
Yes.
Like okay. So and then do find that whatever to
Okay. So let me present it this way. There are two ways we could solve this, right? We could do all the math and the calculations on the client side. Essentially just reuse this data that we have here and do math, right, by region. Or we could create an API endpoint to give us the data by regions. You see what we did here for cumulatives. We could create an endpoint that gives us something like this, an object back that has the cases, today's deaths, right? We could actually tweak this endpoint, right? Or, make it similar to this, but it will give us that information by region. And if we have this information, we can use this to plot the charts. So this gives us kind of a signature that we are used to, right? The alternative, which I think may be more complex, would be to do the calculations in the front end so that you always get this data back, right? The benefit of that, though, is it will work based on whatever data you get back. And the processing is done on the client computers. But then the benefit of this is the database can give you these numbers very quickly, right? So I will go with, and then of course it's also a negotiation. If we go with creating a new route, right? Then the backend developer is going to have to do a bunch of work, and the front end developer will do a bunch of work. If we choose to do it in the front end, the front end developer has to do all the work, right? Which means it will potentially take longer because they have to do all that calculations and then create the charts. So I'll go with the split because that work can happen on the team. I would typically push for the split because that work can happen in parallel. But then also that endpoint is a resource that's consumable by other apps. You know, it could be mobile apps, it could be other systems. They can query you for that data by region, which I think is a good thing, right? So let's go with that. So we need to create a backend route that gives us that data by region, right? We're going to need to create a service, or no, we'll just use our COVID data service, create a method that needs to fetch that data, and then we'll create our chart components. We can toss our chart components on the, what do you call it? In our app module template, pretty much. Okay, so let's have at it very quickly. Let's get our endpoint together. So so in our routes, right, we have our COVID data endpoint, right? And in this endpoint here, we can then add a new route. So we have this route that just gets the route, right? We can add a new get method. I would say router the get, right? And request response. Sorry, it's an arrow function. All right, and here we'll do our query. This will also help us learn an interesting way to aggregate queries. We're going to do a group by. Okay, so let's borrow one of these queries here. We'll actually borrow all four. We'll borrow everything we're doing here. Well, let's just borrow one first. So this gives us our total, what's this? Today cases, right? So let's borrow this. This is our today cases. Actually, I need the promises array and all of that. So let's do that as well. Promises array. Okay. And here. And here. And let's save that so that we can test this endpoint. So we now come here, look at data / regions, right? Okay, what's going on? And now read property 0 or 1 defined. Oh, right here. Yeah, so that's because of this. So this one here. All right. Still no. General property 0 undefined online 100. Here's our line 100. Oh yeah. So 0 here. Dash. All right. So we have this. Okay. Now this, of course, is wrong, right? Because it is these cases in total, right? So what we want to do is we want to select as today cases, right? Region as region, right? From that, what date reported, we're gonna say group by, okay? And then here, we're going to do some, I can do the cases and the deaths in the same query. So we're gonna sum to new cases, right? Some, what did I do? So we're gonna sum new cases and sum new deaths. Some new deaths as today death, right? Because the where clause is the same. That way I don't repeat myself, right? From whatever. All right. And so what I now have here is I want to now have this is going to give me back an array of regions. So I'm just going to return with, I'm just going to have today. Then the response is 0. Today. Let's save that. Let's see what we get. Nope. Okay, I have a problem here. Okay. Oh, okay. So it has a problem with, I think, my group by. Oh, okay, okay. And probably data. I need to do my group by after this. My group by needs to be after the word class. That's what it is. Let's see. All right. So here's what we have now. By region. Right? And these are today's cases and today's deaths by region. Okay? And so we can do the same thing for total. Our total will just be the same query, right? Without the where, clause. Okay. And this will be cumulative. Well, no.
Yeah,
No, it's
so
still with the where. We still need the where. Yeah. We still need the where, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
We
yes.
still need the where. Yeah. So it's going to be total. Total. But here, what we want is cumulative.
Yeah, that's right.
Relative. And this will be cumulative. And so do all right. All right. And this should do it for us, where we can have today and total region. Okay. So this gives us our data. And so looking at this, we can then plot. So we have our backend. Awesome. And then here we can come to our service here. So let's just edit that within COVID data service, right? Let's edit the service, and we can say create a new function here or a new method on our service here. Let's just copy that so we have the same URL, right? I will rename this to get data by region, right? And so here, I'm going to change this here. The regions, right? Okay. Excuse me for 1 second. 1 quick second. I've been speaking on mute. So we have the data by regions now. Okay. And now we can come back into our app component and fetch it. So we're going to come here, split up the component, right? And similar to what we did here, we're going to also fetch this. Okay. And we're going to get data by region, right? And we're going to say this the region data, right? And let's have a separate loading bar for this. So region loading. Okay, I'll create a new property for that. So region loading equals true. All right, and we should be good. So we actually have it now where if we come here, ooh, what's the thing about property region data does not exist. Oh yeah, we need region data. So all right. And if we look now, if we inspect this, we should now have two calls going out. All right. Let's see. This one. Actually, let's just on network. Let's see. Do we see our two calls for regions? That actually, let's clean this up a little. We don't need root arguments. All right, so COVID data and regions. Okay, so that's our new call to the backend, right? And this is the old call that we had before. So now that we have our regions data here, we're going to create our component for regions and create our charts. Okay, so first thing we're going to do here is ngg c. I think we can make one pie chart component rather than 4 pie charts. We'll make one and make it a little configurable, right? So we can provide some input to it. So here, we're just going to say pie chart, right? And add that to the applet. Okay. So we now have our pie charts, and what we want here, then the component here is we want to lay it out. So we want the pie chart before the table, right? That's the data. I'm going to do this here. Let's do this. I'm going to put this NGA on that. And on that. Okay. And this way I can get rid of this div here. Okay, so I'm going to put it between the highlights and the charts. So I'm going to say div, right? FX layout equal row. Right? App by chart. That's my new pie chart component. Right? And here, my ngif here is ngif. What do I call that? Regions loading. Like that. see. Property, no. I've forgotten what I call that property. Anyone remember? Region loading. Let's change it to regions. All right. So I have my pie chart works here. Okay. So now let's create our first pie chart. I'm going to clear this. Let's see what's going on. So then pie charts. I'm going to edit the HTML. Right. Let's make a div here. Chart. And let's edit the CSS for it as well. Okay. Div.pie chart. So this div, padding, pixel, background, black.
Sorry, because some people got kicked out due to power failure.
Oh, okay.
Let them back.
Okay. And then margin bottom. All right. Okay. We have our pie chart here. That's a lovely pie chart, right? Who's not feeling it?
I didn't know. We've not even seen it yet.
It's right there. Look at it.
Oh, that little square.
All right. So we're going to do the magic for the pie chart now. But first, let's set the FX flex. You notice this for our pie chart here. We need to FX flex it. Right. So that one pie chart is going to take the whole thing down. All right. We want to have 4. Okay, and the same thing, we need our layout gap. We same as above here, which was Apex layout gap. So Apex layout gap equals 15 pixel. All right. It's the same, right? All right. Okay, so we have those 4 boxes for our charts. So let's get our chart in here. We're going to use AM charts for this. So let's pull in our AM charts. So we're going to go look at the documentation to install it and start. So AM4. Okay, so getting started, that was a good place to start. Using AM4 charts and TypeScript applications. Okay, we need to install that. Copy this. Now they don't have a save there. We will have to add the save ourselves. So add the save. Okay.
What's just making me happy is all this while I was like, oh, we have to learn Angular, we have to learn this, we have to learn that, we have to learn this. It just sounded so intimidating. But knowing that it's not about learning everything, but knowing what to lift from the respective libraries.
Yeah. I mean, you have to write your code, and you see that like this will only get us as far as getting the library set up. Right now, so let's now go into, so now that we have AM charts installed, right, we now have to use it. And so this is what we need to go. So we need to import it. So let's open up our pie chart component, right? And then we now have to say, so this tells us to import at the top. So we're going to do that here, right? This gives us these two. Get started. All right. Scopes. What's this? Importing assets. Here. I'm creating a chart. All right. Let's look at pie chart. Okay. So creating a pie chart in TypeScript. So we import these two, which we've done. Oh, now there is actually there's documentation here for using Angular, right? For using AM charts in Angular. So all right, so done there. All right, so this is using a clean.
Sorry, Inka, those guys are still in the lobby.
Oh, I let them in before. Okay. All right, so here now is where we need to use ng zone. All right, so this requires us to import ng zone. Here. ng zone. And then we need to direct inject ng zone. So we'll do that here. Private ng zone. All right, which we should already be used to. Right? This is our direct injection. Okay. And then now we need to also define our chart. Private chart is AM4 charts. The pie chart. All right. So that's just declaring our private variable for our chart, which is fine. And then this is critical. This is the zone that we run outside angular. All right. So we need to do this here. Copy that, which is a new method, which does just that after the view is initialized, then this mg zone dot run outside angular. And in here is where we can create our chart. All right. Okay. All right. Now we need to also add our input so we can get the data in. So let's add our input for the data. And then I'm just going to call this data. We need to decorate it as an input. So add input data, right? And now we're just using I'm too lazy to create a type. All right. So this gets us set up. So let's look at the documentation for pie chart here. It's right here. And what we need for a pie chart is we need data in this structure. Literally just label and key and value, or label and value, right? So let's come here. We need to split add that component. Let's open up that HTML here so we can pipe in the data to it. So we're going to say this data region data. Let's see what we have. All right, we did. No, has no exported member. Yeah. Oh, right here. Oh, the type of here. Okay. All right. So we're good now. Okay. So we pipe. Oh, God, really? Oh. Well, I will just copy this. This method, I mean, if you look at the error message, it tells us what it is. See this, it says this property run outside angular does not exist on type ng zone. So yeah, I accidentally made it uppercase. Run outside angular. Yeah, that solves it. Okay. All right. So now let's actually initialize the chart. And so we have our data, right? What we're going to do is we're going to take, we need to create a data array like this, and we need to attach it to a pie chart. Okay, so first we're going to create a new chart. So we're going to say here, let chart equals new, no, sorry, AM chart, let's see, AM 4 for create. Now this takes a selector for the div. So pie chart, and then AM4, that's the pie chart. All right. Let's see. So we need a name for this. Okay. So we've initialized, we've set up our chart variable, right? So this is our chart variable there. So now we need to give it data. So we need to create a new series. So do this. And I try just copy this. So that's sometime. Right? Give us a new series. Now when we set up the series here. Okay. And this is going to be field value is what's our field value? Oh, and then this is going to be region. Okay. All right. I know you guys are probably like totally lost right now, but I want this value to be configurable. I don't need to be hard coded, so I'm going to make it an input. And that's because we want to show today's cases, today's deaths, total cases, total deaths. So the value field will be used will be different on each pie chart, right? So I can't hard code it. If not, I'll have to have 4 different pie charts. I want to make it just one. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make an input for the value field. So I'll call it value field, right? And then here And then do that input value. Right? With a string. So now I can come here and say value field equals today cases. All right. So that sets us up here. And then our data here is, here's our data, region data.today. Which is, we come here. Here we have today and total. So this chart is going to show today, and it's going to show today cases, which is on today, each one has today cases. So it will just use this on the chart. That's what we're doing there. Right, and here it's something about something property today cases does not exist inside app component. Oh, okay. Music to do. And we combine it. Look at that. It's trying to generate our chart already. You see that? But we haven't connected the data yet, so we're almost there. One more step. So we've set up the series. Yeah.
That preview that preview shows the AM charts logo. So that's what the clients will see.
No. Yes. So no, this is telling us AM charts has kicked in.
Yes.
It's not a preview.
So what we're looking at right now is would the public see that? People who visit our site, would they see that AM chart logo?
Unless you pay for it.
Okay, gotcha.
you pay to not have the logo, and it's the same thing with Google Maps and Google services.
Gotcha.
If you want to use it and not have the logo, you pay for them to remove the logo.
Nice.
So you're using it for free, so you have to attribute. So we have our series here, all right, and then we need to define our chart data, right? All right, so, and that's just the last piece. That's just what we're missing here, is we haven't defined the data on the data. So if we say chart the data equals this dot data, right? And we save that, I'll come here. All right, what is wrong with you? Let's see, that's wrong with the data. And this the value field. Okay, let's inspect this and let's see what's going on. Just a little debugging, and I think we have all the code for you, but chart was not disclosed. Okay, so this the data is fine. So our value field is what's undefined. No, our value field is there. Today cases. Okay. Oh, okay. I know what the problem is. Our chart shows up. Oh, okay. Hold on, let's look at this again. One thing that we missed doing. We're not unloading the tracks. Let's do this. Let this out. Going to destroy. Let's just do this. Because we need to clear the the resources it's using. If not, we'll be in trouble. So let's do that. Oh, this good. Empty zone. All right. Let's see what's going on. What's our field total cases? Today cases. And actually have this stuff is always showing me up on the last bit. And our data is fine, right? Our data is fine. Our data is fine. It's an array. Field and this is region. Yeah. Right. 1 second. Um, 1 second. Last thing. So set up the chart, set up the series, put it all together. And so we did created the div, which is why we don't have it showing the data. Chart is equal and for cool. Yeah. Why isn't it? I chart component line 23. So, there's something weird going on. I don't know if anyone can notice this, but after initialization, right, it's then again coming to, it's reinitializing the chart pretty much with no data. Oh. Guess what the problem is? Anyone? Nobody's struggling trying to guess. I know.
I'm seeing undefined. I'm assuming it still needs some.
Look, you know why we have 3 more calls? Because we're using that component 3 times without any data. So it actually is drawing the chart and then blowing it away.
Interesting.
Yeah, because they're referring to the same div. Let me show you. If I remove this, if I do that,
Yay.
so I was actually the one screwing up the chart, and so now we have this chart here, right? So what I need to do is that, because I'm gonna have, I can't, the problem with an ID, right, is that an ID is unique, right? So I know what to do. I know what to do. Here, we're gonna make it that dynamic. Okay. And so here, we're gonna pass it a dynamic ID, right? So which is this, the chart ID. We're gonna make chart ID an input as well. Right? And then, which solves the problem in that template. Then here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna provide it. Right now, it sees no chart, and we're gonna provide it with a chart ID equals, what's this? Today cases. Right? Save this. Come on, work with me here. Impress the people. There you go. So this is solved now. And we can actually do something like this here. We can say H3 title. Right? And then here, we'll come here and give it an input for title as well. Input. That is string. And then here, and say today's cases, right? Let's save that. So keeping title on that chart. See that right there? And have today's cases here. So now we can look at the beauty of this. Very, very easily create our 4 charts. Just copy this, 2, 3, 4. And what we're gonna do is, this is today's deaths, right? And then region of today deaths. All right, and then here, this is gonna be total cases, right? Total. And this is going to be total cases. Oh. All right. Let's see again. Come on. Refresh. All right, so we're missing total because I called it total maybe rather than this total. And our total fields are total cases, total deaths. All right. Region data total. What am I missing in my total? What am I missing? I need someone's eyes. I need someone's eyes here. What am I missing here? My total. Total cases.
Is it the capital and the totals debt or no?
Where is that?
Line 7.
Line 7.
Like the title, totals, debts, or does that matter? The D is in capital.
Line 7 or line 8?
Line 7.
Oh, that's just a string. So it doesn't
Okay.
matter.
Okay. So.
Yeah, so that can be, yeah. But what I'm wondering is, so my totals isn't showing, so my data is region data dot total, right? Let's change this in the back end to totals, just so that I'm not extensively. All right, and so this will change here to totals. I'm gonna do that. All right, and so let's come back here. Let's change this to totals. Oh, well, we're over time. No one's complaining.
I have to see the remaining two charts.
Yeah. All right. So this is totals. Let's see if that helps. It still do not render. But they show the data is right here. And the field is right. That's the craziest thing. Let's take it up as an assignment and fix it.
Me in 4 weeks' time.
I was about to rejoice.
Well, okay. Let me try. Let me just do a couple of things here, just to make this a little easier. One, I want to make these charts bigger. Anyway, so our component is good. So let's pie chart. Let's just come to the style here and say height 300 pixel. Yeah, it's a little bigger. And then that way the division size is. So the question here is why this chart is right. What total? If I take these two out,
And it's just for the day, right? The fact that the total cases are cumulative has nothing to do with warping the formula, right?
yeah, no, it has nothing to do with it because
It's not a formula thing. It's more of the HTML, right?
Yeah, it's more of the chart component. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, they're empty. So what we need to do, and let's just look at it carefully, is so the component works because the first two use the component, right? So we know the component works. The question, but it doesn't work for the second set of values. Now we know we are passing it the right thing because if we come here to our inspector, look at our console, we do have data, right? Total cases, total death, right? So we do have our totals data. So this so our data here is correct because that's getting into it correctly, right? It's getting to it as total, which is fine. Our value field, total cases, exists on the data, right? Because if I break this, if I add an extra S here, I'm breaking it so I can break the second one. So, oh, mamma mia. Are these two identical? 19.63. Okay. So here's what I'm starting to see here is these two are identical. If I take this top one out, look at this, we should have no chart. Okay. So where's our ID, our chart ID? Chart ID is today cases, today deaths. I think I have an idea of what this is. And if I remove this one here, okay. So it's right, and then let's back this one. Right there, here. The ID is today cases. This might stay here. ID is today there. Okay. This next one here. The ID is total cases, which is correct. Yeah, I don't get it. Let's see why. Make sure I can check them here. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to debug this, but I'm hoping that at least this gives you a pretty decent idea of what's possible. Right. We didn't get to do the date range thing, but we got to see some angular material and the flex grid in action. So that progress thing that we have is angular material. That's such a bummer. And then the flex box.
It was good to see how everything works together. Because before today, a lot of these things were just amorphous concepts like angular material, angular. You know, they're all just like, what is this? What is this? What is this? But now I'm getting to understand them little by little.
Yeah. Well, we'll stop here, and then maybe next class we'll pick up tomorrow for the infrastructure. We're going to automate the ingestion of this data, right? So we're going to set it up so that it is automatically sucking this data and chucking it into a database. Right.
Inside the Jenkins database?
It won't be Jenkins,
Okay.
but we're going to use our CloudWatch. And we're going to set up a CloudWatch rule, and set up a Lambda function, right, that handles that. Lambda function will go fetch, essentially do the CSV file,
Okay.
fetch it, and then write it into the database. So we'll take that script that we wrote to put the data in the database, we'll convert it and make it into a Lambda function, and then add to the Lambda function to fetch the file from a remote location rather than from this. Right? And that will set it up where all you need to do is come to this application and you get the latest updates, right? Daily updates, or even if it's multiple times a day, whatever the interval is. Okay. I would really have loved to have built like a line graph and everything, but the same approach that we've used will just be about creating a time series data, which is a different type of data. And so if you want to see line charts by region, right, by day, by region, if you have about grouping by region, grouping by day, doing the sum on days, right? And then you can see the case count per day, right? And then if you want to see how the cumulative also rises, you can also just do that. Okay. So, I mean, maybe we'll just pick up there next week. Right now, we've learned a lot, right? We've learned a lot of JavaScript, we've learned a lot of Angular. But if you don't remember what we've learned, then what we're doing now is still going to be total Greek. So my recommendation, if you're going to take time over the weekend, is go through, but don't just go through. The most helpful thing to do is to try to do something. You can watch the videos 1,000 times. If you don't try it out, it won't stick, you won't get it. Right? You can't memorize this. You have to know it experientially. So what I'll recommend, like I did at the beginning, actually, let me stop recording so we can have this little chat, and then we'll call it. Okay, there you go. I'll stop recording here.